What if the one voice you spent 20 years trying to forget was the only thing your heart had been waiting to hear? William Carter stood beneath the dazzling lights of a Manhattan convention center, surrounded by giant digital screens displaying the logo of his media empire. More than 3,000 guests filled the ballroom. Investors, executives, journalists, and celebrities occupied every seat. At 50 years old, William had achieved everything the world considered success. His company operated in dozens of cities. His name appeared on magazine covers. His speeches influenced markets. Yet as he adjusted his tie and prepared to deliver the keynote address, a familiar emptiness lingered beneath the polished surface of his life. The audience applauded as he stepped onto the stage. Cameras flashed. The giant screens illuminated his face while thousands watched. William began speaking confidently about innovation, leadership, and the future of communication. His words flowed naturally. He had given versions of this speech countless times before. Then something unexpected happened. Behind the stage, technicians tested audio equipment for the evening entertainment program. A melody drifted softly through the speakers. At first, William barely noticed. The music blended into the background noise of the convention. But then a voice emerged. A single voice. Warm, elegant, familiar. William stopped speaking mid-sentence. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Several people exchanged confused glances. For a brief moment, nobody understood why one of the most composed men in America had suddenly fallen silent. But William was no longer standing inside a crowded ballroom. His mind had traveled backward through 2 decades of memories. That voice belonged to Monica Hayes. It was impossible. 20 years had passed since he had heard her sing. 20 years since she had walked out of his life. 20 years since he had convinced himself that some doors were never meant to reopen. Yet there it was. The same gentle tone. The same emotional depth. The same voice that once filled small jazz clubs in Brooklyn while he sat in the front row pretending not to stare at her. His heartbeat quickened. The convention center disappeared around him. All he could hear was Monica. The audience waited. William stared toward the wings of the stage where the sound had originated. The music lasted only a few seconds before cutting off. Silence followed. But the damage was already done. Every carefully constructed wall he had built over 20 years suddenly felt fragile. "Mr. Carter," a moderator whispered from the side of the stage. William blinked. The ballroom slowly returned into focus. Thousands of faces stared back at him. Yet none of them mattered. Not in that moment. He finished the speech somehow. Later, he would not remember a single word he had said. The applause sounded distant. The standing ovation felt meaningless. As soon as the event ended, he walked directly backstage. Technicians packed equipment into storage cases. Crew members hurried through narrow hallways. "The song that played earlier," William asked. "Where did it come from?" A young sound engineer looked surprised. "Just a recording for a local arts program." William felt his chest tighten. Who was singing? The engineer checked a tablet. A woman named Monica Hayes. She performs at a cultural center in Manhattan. William stared at the screen displaying her name. 20 years of silence had ended with a single song. Without another question, he grabbed his coat and headed toward the exit. For the first time in decades, he was no longer running toward success. He was running toward a memory that had never truly left him. The city lights blurred past William's car as Manhattan moved around him in a river of color and motion. He had canceled 3 meetings, ignored a dozen calls, and left an event that most people would have considered the highlight of the year. None of it mattered. The address of the cultural center glowed on the navigation screen, while memories he had spent 20 years burying rose quietly to the surface. Monica Hayes. Even thinking her name felt unfamiliar after so much time, yet the emotions attached to it remained painfully clear. The building stood on a quiet street lined with historic brownstones and small cafes. It was nothing like the towering corporate headquarters William usually visited. Warm light spilled from tall windows onto the sidewalk. Inside, a modest audience occupied rows of wooden seats while a jazz ensemble prepared for an evening rehearsal. William entered quietly and took a place in the back row. Nobody recognized him. For once, he was grateful. The room carried an atmosphere he had almost forgotten existed. There were no flashing cameras, no investors, no speeches, only music. A few moments later, a woman stepped onto the stage. William stopped breathing. Time had changed details, but not essence. Monica was older now, just as he was. Wisdom softened her features. Confidence shaped the way she carried herself. Her dark skin glowed beneath the warm stage lights. She wore a simple navy dress and held a microphone with calm familiarity. Yet the moment she began to sing, 20 years disappeared. The voice was exactly the same. Rich, elegant, honest. Every note seemed to carry pieces of a life he had never stopped wondering about. William sat motionless while the audience listened in silence. Around him, people smiled and swayed gently to the music. They saw an accomplished performer. William saw something entirely different. He saw the woman who once believed in him before the world knew his name. The woman who sat beside him in tiny diners when he could barely afford dinner. The woman who celebrated every small victory during the uncertain years before success arrived. As the song ended, applause filled the room. Monica smiled graciously and thanked the audience. William felt his chest tighten unexpectedly. There had been a time when he knew every expression on her face. Now he was a stranger sitting 30 feet away. The realization hurt more than he expected. The rehearsal continued. Monica introduced younger musicians, offered encouragement, and shared the spotlight with remarkable generosity. She seemed less concerned with attention than with helping others shine. William found himself smiling. Some things never changed. Nearly an hour later, the evening concluded. Audience members gathered their belongings and slowly filtered toward the exits. William remained seated. His heart pounded with a nervousness he had not experienced in decades. Billion-dollar negotiations never affected him like this. Standing to his feet felt harder than delivering any public speech. Monica stepped down from the stage and began speaking with students near the front row. Then, almost as if guided by instinct, she looked toward the back of the room. Their eyes met. Everything stopped. The conversations around them faded into silence. The distance between them suddenly felt both enormous and impossibly small. Surprise appeared first in Monica's expression, then disbelief. Neither moved. Neither spoke. 20 years of unanswered questions stood quietly between them. And for the first time since the night she disappeared from his life, William realized that hearing her voice had been the easy part. Facing her again was something else entirely. For several seconds, neither William nor Monica moved. The nearly empty rehearsal hall seemed suspended between past and present, as though 20 years had folded into a single moment. Around them, musicians packed instruments into cases and students gathered sheet music from scattered chairs. Life continued normally for everyone else. But for William, the world had narrowed to the woman standing beneath the warm glow of the stage lights. Monica was the first to recover. She offered a small, polite smile, the kind people gave old acquaintances after years apart. Yet William could see uncertainty hidden behind it. "William," she said softly. Hearing his name in her voice felt strangely familiar. "Monica." It was all he could manage. They stood facing each other while countless memories crowded his mind. Late-night conversations in tiny coffee shops, long walks through Brooklyn streets, shared dreams spoken beneath city skylines. Pieces of a life that once felt inevitable. Monica glanced toward the students waiting nearby. "Give me a few minutes." William nodded. "Of course." He watched as she spoke with the young musicians. She encouraged one singer, complimented another pianist, and thanked several volunteers individually before they left. The scene revealed something he already suspected. Monica had become exactly the kind of person she always wanted to be. Someone who lifted others instead of chasing attention for herself. 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at a quiet cafe around the corner from the cultural center. Rain tapped softly against the windows while jazz music drifted through hidden speakers. The atmosphere felt oddly familiar. Years ago, they had spent countless evenings in places like this, talking until employees stacked chairs around them. Now 2 untouched cups of coffee rested between them. "You look well," Monica said. William laughed quietly. "That sounds like something people say when they do not know what else to say." A smile touched her face. Maybe, for the first time, some of the tension eased. Outside, headlights reflected across rain-slick streets. Inside, silence settled comfortably for a moment. "I heard your voice tonight," William finally said. Everything stopped. Monica lowered her eyes toward her coffee cup. "I never expected to see you again." The honesty of the statement struck him. "Neither did I." Another silence followed. Not hostile, not awkward, simply heavy with years that neither knew how to summarize. William studied her carefully. "Are you happy?" The question surprised both of them. Monica considered it thoughtfully before answering. Most days, yes. Her response felt genuine. And you? She asked. William looked through the window at the ring. For decades, people assumed they knew him because they recognized his name. Success created the illusion of fulfillment. But very few people ever asked the question Monica had just asked. Fewer still cared about the answer. I have been busy, he said. Monica smiled knowingly. That is not what I asked. William laughed softly. Some things truly never changed. She always had a way of seeing beyond carefully prepared answers. Then no, he admitted. Not really. Monica looked at him for several seconds without speaking. There was no judgment in her expression, only understanding. And somehow that made the confession easier. As rain continued falling outside the cafe windows, William realized that for the first time in 20 years, he was sitting across from the only person who had ever known the version of him that existed before success, before fame, before regret. And despite everything that had happened, neither of them had yet asked the question that mattered most. What had truly torn them apart all those years ago? Rain continued falling outside the cafe long after their coffee had gone cold. The city beyond the windows glowed beneath reflections of streetlights and passing cars, but neither William nor Monica seemed aware of the world outside their table. 20 years carried a strange weight. Too much time to summarize. Too much history to explain in a few sentences. Yet neither wanted to leave. Do you still live in Manhattan? William asked. Monica nodded. Most of the year. A faint smile appeared. I teach music now. I spend part of my time mentoring young performers. William was not surprised. Even when they were young, Monica cared more about helping others discover their potential than about her own recognition. They are lucky to have you. Monica lowered her eyes briefly. Thank you. Silence followed again. Comfortable in some ways. Painful in others. William glanced around the cafe before reaching into his wallet to pay the bill. As he opened it, something slipped free and landed softly on the table. A photograph. Monica froze. William immediately recognized the picture. It was old. The edges were worn from years of being carried everywhere. In the photograph, a younger Monica stood beside a younger William on a Brooklyn pier overlooking the East River. They were smiling at something outside the frame. Neither looked toward the camera. Neither knew what life would eventually become. For several seconds, Monica simply stared at the image. You kept it? She asked quietly. William looked at the photograph and then at her. I never stopped. Emotion flickered across her face before she carefully looked away. Outside, the rain intensified against the glass. William realized there was no longer any reason to avoid the questions waiting between them. Monica, he said softly. What happened? She knew exactly what he meant. The smile disappeared from her face. Her gaze settled on the photograph. I spent years wondering if you would ever ask me that. William leaned forward slightly. I spent years wondering why you disappeared. Monica closed her eyes briefly. The reaction surprised him. There was sadness there. Old sadness. The kind that survives long after circumstances change. I did not disappear, she said quietly. William frowned. What do you mean? She looked directly at him. I waited. The words landed heavily between them. Waited? Monica nodded. For months. William stared at her in disbelief. I looked everywhere for you. Her expression changed. Genuine confusion appeared in her eyes. You did. Of course I did. Neither spoke for several seconds. A realization was beginning to emerge, slow and unsettling. Monica folded her hands together. William, I never left because I stopped caring. The honesty in her voice made it impossible to look away. Then why? Monica inhaled slowly. Because someone came to see me. William felt his pulse quicken. Who? She hesitated. A woman. Confusion deepened across his face. What woman? Monica looked down at the old photograph resting between them. A woman who told me she was your future. The cafe suddenly felt very quiet. Outside, rain continued falling across Manhattan. Inside, the first crack appeared in a story both of them had believed for 20 years. And for the first time since seeing Monica again, William realized that the truth about their separation might be completely different from everything he had spent 2 decades believing. William stared at Monica as the rain traced silver lines down the cafe window. A woman who claimed to be his future. The statement sounded impossible, yet the pain in Monica's eyes made it clear she believed every word she was saying. I do not understand, William said quietly. Monica took a slow breath. Neither did I at the time. Her fingers rested lightly against the edge of the old photograph. A few weeks after you received that offer in California, a woman came to see me after one of my performances. William searched his memory. 20 years earlier, everything in his life had been changing at once. Investors had appeared. Opportunities had multiplied. Every day felt like a race toward a future he barely understood. Who was she? Monica shook her head. I never knew her name. She was elegant, confident. She knew details about your business plans, your meetings, even where you planned to live. William frowned. And what did she tell you? Monica looked out at the rain before answering. She told me you were moving on. She said your future required someone who fit into that world. Someone who would help build your public image. The words hung heavily between them. William felt disbelief growing inside him. You believed her? Monica smiled sadly. At first, no. Her eyes returned to his. Then she showed me photographs. William's expression hardened with confusion. Photographs? Monica nodded. Pictures of you attending events with her. Business dinners. Charity galas. Meetings that looked very personal. William leaned back slowly. The memories began returning. Those events had happened. Countless photographs had been taken during that period. Monica, please let me finish. He nodded. She said you had chosen your future. She told me you were too kind to end things directly and that she was doing what needed to be done. Silence filled the space between them. Why did you not ask me? William finally whispered. Monica laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. I was 28 years old. You were suddenly becoming someone important. Every newspaper seemed to have your picture on the front page. She lowered her gaze. And the truth is, I was scared. William's heart tightened. Scared of what? Of becoming the woman who begged someone to stay. The honesty of the answer left him speechless. Monica had always carried her dignity quietly. Even when they were young, she never chased affection that was not freely given. I waited for you to call, she continued. For you to explain. For you to tell me she was lying. William stared at her. I did call. Monica blinked. What? Every day. Confusion immediately crossed her face. No, you did not. Monica, I absolutely did. He pulled out his phone and opened old digital archives he had transferred through the years. Buried among preserved records were notes, emails, and reminders from that period. Evidence of dozens of unanswered attempts. Monica looked at the screen in disbelief. I never received them. Neither spoke for several seconds. The realization unfolding between them felt larger than either expected. A stranger had delivered a message. Calls had never arrived. Letters had never been answered. For 20 years, both had believed the other chose to walk away. Outside, the rain finally began to slow. Inside, a different storm was ending. And for the first time since their reunion, William and Monica were no longer looking at each other through the lens of old heartbreak. They were beginning to see the truth hidden behind it. Neither William nor Monica noticed when the cafe staff began stacking chairs near the entrance. Hours had passed, yet neither seemed eager to leave. For the first time in 2 decades, they were no longer speaking through assumptions. They were speaking through truth. The difference felt almost overwhelming. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The city streets shimmered beneath reflections of amber streetlights, and pedestrians moved through the night wrapped in coats and quiet conversations. Inside, William sat staring at the old photograph resting between them. 20 years, he said softly. We lost 20 years because neither of us knew what the other was trying to say. Monica looked at him carefully. There was sadness in her eyes, but no bitterness. Time had softened certain wounds, even if it had never erased them. Maybe, she said. Or maybe we lost 20 years because life kept moving while we were standing still. William understood what she meant. For years he had carried questions he never answered. Instead of searching deeper, he buried himself in work. Every promotion became another distraction. Every business victory became another excuse not to revisit the past. Monica had done something different. She had built a meaningful life. She had poured herself into music, students, and community. Yet beneath those accomplishments, she had carried unanswered questions too. Did you ever think about reaching out again? William asked. Monica smiled. Faintly. More times than I can count. The honesty surprised him. Then why did you not? She looked through the window toward the city lights. Because every year that passed made it harder. William nodded slowly. He understood that feeling all too well. A month becomes a year. A year becomes 5. Eventually the silence feels permanent. And you? She asked. Did you ever think about finding me? William laughed quietly. I hired private investigators twice. Monica stared at him. You did what? Not my proudest decision. For the first time that evening, genuine laughter escaped her. The sound instantly transported him back 20 years. Some things had changed. That had not. What happened? She asked. Nothing. William smiled. Both times I convinced myself it was too late before they found anything useful. Monica shook her head in disbelief. You always overcomplicated everything. And you always disappeared before explaining things. Her smile widened. The familiar rhythm of their conversations slowly returned. It felt strange and natural at the same time. The years between them had not vanished. Yet somehow they no longer felt impossible. Eventually the cafe owner approached politely. I hate to interrupt, but we are closing. Monica glanced at the clock and looked surprised. It was nearly midnight. They stepped outside together into the cool Manhattan air. The streets were quieter now. Reflections of skyscrapers stretched across puddles left by the storm. For a moment, they simply stood there beneath the glow of the streetlights. Neither seemed certain how to end the evening. I have a rehearsal tomorrow afternoon, Monica said. William nodded. I know. She laughed softly. Of course you know. Silence followed. Then William reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small business card. After looking at it for a moment, he placed it back inside. Actually, he said, you already know how to find me. Monica smiled. I suppose I do. For a few seconds, neither moved. Then something unexpected happened. Not a dramatic gesture. Not a declaration. Simply a choice. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow after rehearsal? William asked. Monica studied him carefully. The question carried no pressure. No expectations. Only possibility. After a long moment, she smiled. Yes. And for the first time in 20 years, the future no longer felt closed. The next afternoon arrived with unexpected anticipation. For most of his adult life, William Carter approached each day with carefully planned schedules and predictable routines. Yet as he drove across Manhattan toward the cultural center, he felt something he had not experienced in years. Uncertainty. Not the kind that came from business negotiations or financial risks. Something far more personal. Something that mattered. The rehearsal hall was already alive with music when he arrived. Through the partially open doors, he could hear voices blending together in harmony while a piano guided the melody. William remained quietly near the entrance. He did not want to interrupt. Inside, Monica moved among the young performers with calm confidence. She listened attentively, offered suggestions, and encouraged nervous students with a patience that seemed effortless. Watching her felt strangely emotional. 20 years earlier, she had dreamed about building a place where music could help people find their confidence. Somehow, despite everything life had placed in her path, she had done exactly that. When rehearsal finally ended, several students approached Monica before leaving. One young woman hugged her tightly. Thank you for believing in me, she said. Monica smiled warmly. You did the hard work. I only reminded you what you were capable of. William watched the exchange carefully. Success had brought him influence. Monica had chosen impact. The distinction suddenly felt important. Eventually, the room emptied, leaving only the two of them beneath the soft glow of stage lights. You came, Monica said. William smiled. You said yes. She laughed softly. Fair point. They decided to walk before dinner. The evening air carried the first hints of autumn, and golden sunlight reflected from glass towers throughout the city. For nearly an hour, they wandered through familiar neighborhoods, sharing stories that could never fit into a single conversation. Monica spoke about her students, community programs, and performances. William spoke less about business than he usually did. Instead, he talked about his parents, his regrets, and the loneliness that sometimes followed success. To his surprise, honesty felt easier with Monica than with anyone else. As they crossed a small park, Monica suddenly stopped beside a bench. There is something I never told you, she said quietly. William felt his heartbeat quicken. What is it? Monica sat down and looked toward children playing in the distance. After everything happened 20 years ago, I spent a long time angry. William lowered himself onto the bench beside her. I understand. She shook her head. No, you probably do not. A sad smile touched her face. I was not angry because I thought you left. I was angry because I thought I had misjudged you. William listened carefully. You believed in me before anyone else did. Monica continued. So, when that woman appeared and convinced me you had moved on, I stopped trusting my own judgment. The confession carried more pain than any accusation. William understood immediately. Losing a relationship hurt. Losing faith in your ability to trust yourself could hurt even more. Monica, he said softly, none of that was your fault. She looked at him for several seconds. Then, for the first time since their reunion, tears appeared in her eyes. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that arrived only when someone finally stopped carrying a burden alone. William did not rush to fill the silence. He simply stayed beside her. As the sun began sinking behind the skyline, painting the city in shades of gold and amber, both of them realized something important. The truth they had discovered was not reopening old wounds. It was finally allowing them to heal. The weeks that followed unfolded with a quiet rhythm neither William nor Monica had expected. There was no attempt to reclaim the past. Neither of them spoke about lost years as though they could somehow be recovered. Instead, they focused on the present. They met for coffee on ordinary mornings. They attended student performances together. They shared long conversations that stretched well beyond midnight. Slowly, the distance created by 20 years of silence began to feel smaller. One Saturday afternoon, Monica invited William to attend a community music showcase organized by her students. The event took place inside a renovated theater in Brooklyn, the same borough where many of their earliest memories had been created. Families filled the audience. Young performers adjusted microphones nervously backstage. Volunteers hurried through the aisles carrying programs and bottled water. William arrived early and quietly took a seat near the front. As he watched Monica move through the theater greeting students and parents, he realized something important. For years, he had measured success through numbers. Revenue, growth, recognition. Monica measured success differently. She measured it through people, through confidence restored, through opportunities created, through lives changed. When the showcase began, one student after another stepped onto the stage. Some sang, others played instruments. A few spoke about how Monica had encouraged them when they doubted themselves. William listened carefully. The stories shared a common theme. Monica had spent 2 decades helping people believe in possibilities they could not yet see. During intermission, a young pianist approached William. "You are Monica's friend, right?" the teenager asked. William smiled. "I hope so." The student laughed. "She talks about second chances all the time." William glanced toward the stage where Monica was helping another performer prepare. "Does she? Every week?" The student nodded. "She says life rarely moves in a straight line." Before William could respond, the young musician hurried away. Yet the words remained with him. Life rarely moves in a straight line. Looking back, he realized how true that was. The future he once imagined had never happened. The future he eventually built had not brought the peace he expected. And now, standing in a theater he had not visited in decades, he found himself happier than he had been in years. After the performance ended, guests gathered in the lobby beneath warm lights and framed photographs of past productions. Monica stood, surrounded by students celebrating a successful evening. Her smile seemed brighter than anything William remembered. Eventually, the crowd thinned, leaving the two of them standing near the theater entrance. Outside, the city glowed beneath a sky filled with stars barely visible beyond the lights of Brooklyn. "Thank you for coming," Monica said. "Thank you for inviting me." She studied him for a moment. "You seem different." William laughed softly. "I probably am." "No," Monica replied. "I mean different from the man who walked into the rehearsal hall that first night." William considered her words. She was right. The man who arrived that evening carried 20 years of regret. He carried questions, assumptions, and unfinished conversations. Those burdens no longer felt as heavy. "Maybe I finally stopped looking backward," he said. Monica smiled gently. "That sounds healthy." For several seconds, they stood quietly together, listening to distant city sounds drifting through the evening air. Then Monica reached for his hand. The gesture was simple, natural, unforced. William looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. Neither spoke. They did not need to. Some moments carried their own language. And as they walked side by side beneath the glow of the streetlights, both understood that healing was no longer something happening to them. It was something they were choosing together. Nearly a year later, autumn returned to New York with the same golden light that had filled the city on the evening William first heard Monica's voice again. The season felt different now, not because the skyline had changed or because the streets looked unfamiliar. It felt different because neither of them was carrying the same weight anymore. On a crisp Saturday afternoon, the Cultural Center hosted its largest annual benefit concert. Students, families, community leaders, and supporters filled every seat in the auditorium. Banners celebrating music education decorated the walls. Excitement buzzed through the crowd as performers prepared backstage. Monica stood near the curtain, reviewing the program one final time. Across the room, William helped volunteers arrange donated scholarships that would fund music lessons for dozens of young artists. Watching him laugh with students felt almost surreal. Years ago, she would never have imagined this version of their story. Life had not returned them to the people they once were. It had given them the chance to become better versions of themselves. As the concert began, young musicians stepped onto the stage one after another. The audience applauded every performance. Proud parents wiped away tears. Teachers smiled from the front rows. The atmosphere felt less like an event and more like a celebration of possibility. During the final segment of the evening, Monica walked onto the stage beneath warm amber lights. The room fell silent. She thanked the audience for supporting the center and spoke briefly about the importance of second chances. Not only in music, in life. William listened from the front row. Every word felt personal. Sometimes, Monica said gently, we spend years believing a door has closed forever. Then life surprises us. Not by giving us the past back, but by showing us that hope still exists. The audience responded with quiet applause. Then she began to sing. It was the same song William had heard during the sound check that changed everything. The same melody that had stopped him in the middle of a speech. Yet tonight it carried a different meaning. The sadness that once lived inside it had been replaced by peace. As her voice filled the auditorium, William felt gratitude unlike anything success had ever given him. Gratitude for truth. Gratitude for healing. Gratitude for the courage it took to begin again. When the final note faded, the audience rose to its feet. Applause echoed through the theater. Monica smiled and bowed graciously before stepping away from the microphone. After the concert ended, guests gathered in the lobby for photographs and celebrations. Students posed proudly with mentors. Families embraced. Laughter filled every corner of the building. Amid the joyful crowd, a photographer approached William and Monica. Would you mind standing together? She asked. Monica glanced at William and smiled. Not at all. They stood side by side beneath a banner, displaying the center's mission statement. The photographer adjusted her camera. Perfect, she said. Look right here. As the camera flashed, William realized something remarkable. 20 years earlier, he had spent his energy chasing the future. 20 years later, he had finally learned the value of the present. The photograph captured two people who had survived misunderstandings, distance, and time itself. Not because fate had made life easy, because they had chosen forgiveness over regret. Later that evening, as they stepped outside beneath a sky filled with stars and city lights, Monica slipped her hand into his. William smiled. Neither needed to say anything. The music had already said it for them. And for the first time in a very long time, both knew they were exactly where they were meant to be.